What's up, Crypto Paradise fam? It's Ian and Nick. We are back with another video. We do not have a guest today. We're talking general market conditions. Obviously, a lot has been going on with Bitcoin, Ethereum, other majors, and really the entire crypto market taking a massive correction over the past week, culminating in a pretty significant dump yesterday, which was Wednesday, May 1st. However, we are now settling, it looks like, around 58K with Bitcoin, and Ethereum's recovered a little bit as well. Nick, where do you think we're going from here? Well, first of all, what do you think caused this crash, right? What's your take on the crash? And then where do you think we go from here, particularly in the short term, right? Because I know long term we're all bullish, but short term, where do you think we go?
I think a lot of people are pointing to the global uncertainty around war as being the reason for the crash. But if we look at history, this little bit of a drop is nothing unusual. In this bull cycle already, we've seen this will be our fourth 20 to 25% drawdown on Bitcoin, very typical. We've also seen after the Bitcoin halving, we usually have the sell the news event, a consolidation before the real bull market occurs. Well, that Bitcoin halving just happened, so we're seeing a little bit of a consolidation. And then lastly, so when the Bitcoin spot ETF was approved in the United States, we had a drawdown. That was the wick high up to $49,000, and we had a drawdown down to $39,000 before we marched to new all-time highs at $73,000. Well, what did we have? We had the Hong Kong Bitcoin spot ETF approved. That was the wick high, and we dropped from that level down to 57,000. I think that was a $69,000 wick on the Hong Kong spot ETF, and we just dropped, like you said, a few days ago to 57,000. So does history repeat itself? Now, I don't think the Hong Kong ETF is near as big as the US ETF, but if that does generate some inflows, we just had the Bitcoin halving, so there's 450 Bitcoin less per day going into circulation. Plus, we already have the US Bitcoin ETFs. Does history repeat itself? You have to sell the news there, and then we rally upward and onward. I personally think that the Bitcoin low is near in. I said if we gave away the uptrend line, which was at $62,000, we're probably headed to 53 to 56,000. Well, we've already hit that 56.5 yesterday, and now we have bounced back to 58.5. Now, do we have another new minor low? Maybe. But I still think that 53,000 Bitcoin will be worst case scenario. I think we have a chance that we are forming a bullish descending triangle here. That means the bounce yesterday was another low. If we break out to the upside, the next target for Bitcoin is 82,000. And I'm still standing by that. I think Bitcoin 100,000 by the end of 2024 is in the cards.
Love it. Fingers crossed you're right. I think you might be. We're definitely long-term bullish, and these 20% drawdowns, like you said, are very common even in a bull run. One thing I just want to highlight real quick for our viewers, and it's an important concept to understand when you're investing really in any asset, particularly equities and crypto. I know this is a very common phenomenon, but it's the buy the rumor, sell the news. It almost happens like clockwork, and it's very counterintuitive, right, to the uninitiated, in my view anyway. What it basically means is people are buying in anticipation of an event, price going up, but when that event happens, people sell. And it's like, what? Why would people sell once the thing actually happens? Well, that's just how it goes. And if you don't know that, you might be one of those people that's thinking, oh, Bitcoin halving happens the next day we're hitting 100K. That's not how it plays out, right? When the event occurs, there usually is a dump, and that's happened pretty much. You can think of it, you mentioned the two ETFs happen with both, right? And it's going to happen again. It's going to happen with your altcoin investments. It's going to happen with equities. This is a very common phenomenon in investing, and people need to understand it. Once you understand it, you can work that to your advantage, right? You can make certain decisions based on knowing what's coming. You know what I mean? But very important thing I wanted to touch on there. My general take is, yes, we just had a 20% drawdown. I think we're hopefully stabilizing at this price. If you look at the greed fear index, there's a very sort of helpful greed fear index indicator right on CoinMarketCap, right on the front page. I was just on it a second ago, and we're very much neutral, but trending a little bearish. We're at 47, right, out of the 100 being the most greed, 0 being the most fear. So which actually is the most fear we've seen in the market in a while. But These things are usually temporary. One interesting thing I read yesterday. So a lot of the volatility is often in Bitcoin is often the result of leverage trading, right? People taking people taking leverage bets up or down. If they guess wrong, they get liquidated, and the price can you can kind of have a cascading effect down, or like, it also can go the other way. This, as I understand it, this most recent drawdown wasn't really apparently the result of leverage trading. A lot of this was outflows from the Bitcoin ETF, apparently, right? So that's not to say, oh my God, bull market over, we should sell and we're going to zero. But it is a little bit different than some of the volatility we're seeing up around the highs, where a lot of that was just, you saw a 5% drop in a day. That was a lot of just excess leverage, as I understand it. So this is a little bit different, but overall, I think it's healthy for the Bitcoin sort of ecosystem to get out a little bit of those speculators. Let's establish a strong support around, hopefully this trend line holds around 58, and let's slowly build our way back up from here. Probably, we're going to see something going back up around. My prediction is towards end of the summer, right? Sometime in the summer, towards the end of the summer. That's how it went last time, right? We had post having, I think, a dump in May. May sell and go away in May, whatever that phrase is. And then I think things started meaningfully recover in August or September. So maybe it'll play out the same. I wouldn't be surprised, because summer is usually kind of weak for markets in general. But we'll see where it goes. I think long term we're good, but it's going to be interesting next few weeks and months.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about that, yeah. So when you're saying ETF outflows, people just assume like BlackRock and Fidelity and whatnot owns all this Bitcoin. That's not really the case. They custodize it, but it's on behalf of a lot of retail investors, people who haven't figured out Coinbase, don't even know what a MetaMask is. Maybe their grandpas and grandparents just trying to get exposure because their financial advisor told them. So understand that these people have just as much emotions, if not more than you. They're not used to seeing 25% drawdowns on assets that they get into. So they will be panic selling ETFs just like anybody else. That's probably why we are starting to see some inflows, as Bitcoin has trended from 73,000 down to 58,000 rather than inflows. We're seeing those outflows, people selling out of their Bitcoin position. They got caught up in the hype and now they're exiting. Like Ian said, this could create the next floor for the next move higher, where the measured move somewhere around $82,000 to $85,000. With that, you also said, sell in May and walk away. A lot of people are saying that. When everybody starts saying something, it usually goes the opposite direction, because the market isn't that easy. All right, so I will be the optimist in the room. Everybody's saying sell in May, go away. Well, I'll tell you that Bitcoin in May for the past 3 years has all been red. Will it happen 4 years in a row? If you look at historical charts of Bitcoin and all of its monthly returns, it very rarely, if ever, has had 4 months in a row, back to back to back years of red and or green. So I believe that we could have a change in the guard. Also, we did have this sell-off at the last couple days of April. That makes it a lot easier for you to have a green month if you're starting near a low. 56.5 was the starting point for May. It makes it a lot easier to have a green month, even if it's a minor green month, only because that sell did happen on the 29th and 30th. Now, we don't know. A lot of people are saying sell in May, go away. The chart isn't overly bullish here. It still has downside risk to 53,000. How long does that take to play out? I don't know. But probabilities would tell you that there is a chance that trend breaks. It's been a 3-year trend already. Everybody's talking about it. And again, I like to fade the general and the leaders of the market. And usually you'll find yourself on the winning side, because once everybody, prophesizes one direction, the market looks to go the other.
Market will always surprise you. That's one thing you will learn once you've been in the space long enough. So we'll see how that plays out. Whether it's May, June, July, who exactly knows when the market's going to bounce back and turn, greed, get full greed again, full bullish again. Nobody really knows. But my take, and I'm sure Nick agrees, is it's eventually going to happen. Mm-hmm. The effects of the halving haven't really come into play yet. I mean, that initial 450 Bitcoins not entering the market every day, that does add up over time. And there's always, it's always played out that there's been a pretty significant parabolic bull run following the halving. So I would expect that does happen at some point here. But why don't we turn our attention to altcoins for a minute, in particular, the big daddy of altcoins, Ethereum. Look at it, it's had a tough go of it. Like, let's just be honest. Relative to Bitcoin, Ethereum has underperformed so far this bull run. If we assume the bull run started about 7 months ago, which it did, Ethereum has not been as strong as Bitcoin. However, I think when you have these Bitcoin drawdowns, you sometimes start to see alts coming to life a bit. And this is not to say we're going to go, jump from 3K to 12K on Ethereum overnight. That's not going to happen. But are we going to see altcoins or a little bit of a resurgence? I'm reading that folks are still bullish on Ethereum. There are some headwinds, particularly regulatory headwinds, which we can get into. But what is your take, Nick, on Ethereum? Are you bullish, bearish right now?
Well, so I think Ethereum, although it's underperformed, has a very similar chart structure as Bitcoin. I'm seeing a bullish descending triangle. That means that we could go to the upside here, or you have downside risk to previous breakout levels around $2,500. As long as we hold around 2,500, we're at 29 here, so it seems like, oh my gosh, the end of the world. It's like another 10% drop maybe. As long as you hold that level, I still think you have a bullish formation, with that next target really being at 4,300 up to $5,000 would be the two measured move targets on that. And I think, I'm not one for trying to predict timing of these things, because the market's always changed and we kind of go day by day. You get your price targets, and then we see what happens, because sometimes you have these massive green bars and it gets there faster. But really, I would say by the end of June, early July, Ethereum could be that $4,500 to $5,000 target level. And we do know when Ethereum starts to outperform Bitcoin, it brings more risk into the market. People feel more favorable about altcoin trades. But besides that, the math is what helps altcoins. So a lot of these altcoins, all ERC20s almost, have their liquidity paired with Ethereum. That means in order to buy these altcoins, you use Ethereum to buy them. When half of the liquidity pool in ETH goes up by 20%, 50%, 100%, what does that do to the native altcoin? It drags that price higher as well. Now, it doesn't drag it by the equal 50%, but it'll drag it by 12.5 to 25%. That's just the way liquidity pools work, and that's why alt seasons take off. As Ethereum drags alts higher, altcoin buyers see the green in the altcoins, and then they FOMO into those high-risk assets that have low liquidity, which pushes price much faster than that of Bitcoin, for example. So ultimately, I think there is downside risk to 2,500. The next upside targets are 4,500 to 5,000. That would be the alt season. That would be the ETH outperformance. And that's what we're all looking for this next bull market.
Yeah, I love that analysis. Excellent point on the liquidity pools. That's sort of an unknown fact. Even among seasoned altcoin traders, you'd be surprised people don't understand or don't know that concept, that when ETH is going higher, the native asset that it's pooled with and liquidity pool on Uniswap is also going to go higher. And then you can have that kind of cascading upward momentum. In terms of, I want to say a couple things from sort of a macro standpoint, because you cover the chart aspect on Ethereum, but from a macro sort of more fundamental standpoint, a couple of points. One on the bullish side, right? Been reading a lot about how native ETH staking has become very popular even among institutions. And if you think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense. So you're looking at yields, right? If you do native ETH staking, and there's a number of platforms you can do, you can do kind of the fractionalized approach with like a Lido, for example. You don't need the full 32 ETH, or you can do the full 32 ETH, as that's sort of the standard approach, you could say. Either way, there's tons of these restaking platforms. I mean, it's a whole industry, right, within the industry. But you can earn anywhere between 4, I guess, to 5%, depending on sort of activity levels on the network. You're anywhere between 4 to 5% annual yield paid out in ETH for staking your ETH. If you're a traditional investor, if you're Wall Street type, whatever, hedge fund guy, 4 to 5%, not bad. It's really not bad. And then you kind of can also take into account the potential upside of the asset, because you're getting paid out in ETH rewards, right? Not to mention the fact that I think from a sort of fundamental analysis standpoint and a narrative standpoint, if you explain ETH's value proposition to a savvy, seasoned investor versus Bitcoin, it's kind of a bit more persuasive. It's like, whole segment of the industry runs on this network. You need a little bit of ETH every time someone runs a transaction. There's millions, hundreds of millions of these transactions happen every day. Portion of those transaction fees need to get burned, right? In bullish times, the supply is actually deflationary. I mean, Bitcoin, we just talked about having low inflation. ETH is actually deflationary after the merge happened. So from just sort of a narrative standpoint, if you're a traditional investor, well, I can get 4% yield staking this asset that's deflationary and the whole industry runs on. That's pretty persuasive. That's pretty good. So I think you're seeing that get more adoption. These restaking platforms very popular. So that, to me, very bullish long-term for ETH. As people become to learn these facts, I think that there's that aha moment. You're going to see more big investors coming in and staking ETH. On the negative side, we have an overzealous regulator here in the United States right now, led by Gary Gensler, the SEC. In my view, anyway, I think in the view of a lot of most people in the crypto industry. And there is now a real question in people's minds, whether the SEC will try to classify Ethereum as a security, which would be quite problematic for so many reasons. It's already been considered not a security based on prior guidance from the SEC. So for them to turn around and say it would really throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing. I think there's a lot of uncertainty hanging over Ethereum because of that. And this consensus lawsuit against the SEC that was just filed, I don't know what to make of that, market bullish, bearish, or what. But I think come sometime in May, there's a deadline for the SEC to make a final decision on some of these Ethereum ETFs. And the consensus right now, the betting markets are saying that there's a 25% chance or less of them approving it. And I don't know if they go as far as to say it's because we think it's a security, or they'll come up with some other reasons to deny it. But there's a lot of uncertainty hanging over the head of Ethereum right now, and I think that is probably weighing it down. So thank you, SEC, for fucking us over once again. We'll see if they do the right thing, but I doubt they will. So that's, to me, that's the bullish case. That's the bearish case. We'll see how it plays out. I don't know what your take is on all those things.
I mean,
other thoughts.
On the fundamental side, we do have Hong Kong approved the Bitcoin spot ETF, but they also approved the Ethereum spot ETF. So inflows have been low over there, but there is opportunity for Hong Kong and Chinese citizens and a lot of Asia to start getting into an Ethereum-based ETF with their institutional money. Obviously, Ethereum has a smaller market cap than Bitcoin, so those inflows do have a more positive impact if or when they start coming in. On top of that, scaling solutions for Ethereum have been picking up, which, if it's a BSC network or Polygon, is a negative for Ethereum because they don't use ETH. But we are seeing that Arbitrum has picked up, Base Network has picked up, and the ETH network have remained strong. These all run on Ethereum. So as more of these meme coins are launched on Base, as more of these infrastructure plays are launched on Arbitrum, you need Ethereum to pair with them in liquidity pools, which takes more ETH off the market ultimately, which is another fundamental catalyst for Ethereum over the long run. Remember that Ethereum is massive, so this does take time, but we see more and more alts. These people are like, oh my God, there's so many shit coins out there. Well, each of those shit coins on these layer 2 scaling solutions do use Ethereum for the liquidity, do use Ethereum for gas fees, which is ultimately bullish for Ethereum as well, even though they're not on the native chain.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think long-term, Ethereum is probably one of the safest and strongest plays in the industry, right? And I emphasize safest and strongest. It may not be it's not going to be your next 100x, right? Those times have come and gone, and great for the people that got an Ethereum ICO, but those times have come and gone. But if you're looking for something that has upside in this bull run, but is, a real blue chip, it's not going anywhere. And it's only getting more adoption over time for all the reasons we stated. I think Ethereum is a very solid play. Full disclosure, I'm staking Ethereum, right? I'm a big believer in it. I'm also a big believer in Bitcoin and altcoins for the most part. So, everything we say on this channel, not financial advice, just our personal opinions. But I do want to retouch on some of the potential headwinds, right? Because it's an area that I used to be a lawyer, for folks who don't know, and not that I'm an expert in securities law or what have you, but I want to touch back on the consensus lawsuit against the SEC, because that's sort of unusual, right? Normally, the SEC is suing companies in this crypto space, not companies suing the SEC. And what the lawsuit is basically saying is they're kind of preemptively coming after the SEC and asking the court essentially to make a ruling that the Ethereum is not a security, that staking on MetaMask doesn't violate securities laws, and I believe the same thing with airdrops, something along those lines. But my take on the lawsuit in general, nobody knows where it's going to go. Nobody knows what's going to happen. What judge gets it? All these things. Does Biden lose the election to Trump? And does Gensler lose his post in 2026? By the way, one other quick thing. People think that, if Trump wins, he's going to replace Gensler the next day. That's not how it works. Right. SEC commissioners, they're on a term. I think it's a 5-year term. His term ends in 2026. So, does he get replaced? So he can get replaced under Biden or Trump, right? So but either way, it's not going to happen until 2026. So does something happen with Gensler where he gets ousted and you have a crypto-friendly person come in? I guess my point is this. Nobody knows what's going to happen with the outcome of that lawsuit. But what we do know is that lawsuits take forever. They take absolutely forever. Look at this Ripple case. I mean, this thing's been going on 3+ years. You know what I mean? And there's still no end in sight. Although I understand there's some sort of settlement offer in place, whatever, settlement demand. We'll see what happens. But my point is this. I don't think we're going to have any guidance from the court on whether Ethereum is a security for multiple years. And so people need to understand that, right? It's not going to be like 2 months from now, courts, it's a security. It's not going to be that way. And then whatever happens in that case can get appealed, you know what I mean, to a higher court. And then maybe even all the way up to the Supreme Court. I know there's a lot of people in the crypto industry advocating for the Supreme Court to look again at the Howey test and make some, carve out some exception or something that relates to crypto assets for the Howey test. So we don't know how it's going to play out, but it's going to take freaking forever. So I don't think, for me, I'm not looking at it as a massive headwind, because I don't think it's going to be next month, we'll hear something horribly negative about Ethereum. That's just not how it's going to play.
Yeah, and I think ultimately there is going to be an Ethereum spot ETF. I mean, I think there's going to be an ETF before that court case is even settled. Because we've already seen Hong Kong improve it. B, the United States is falling behind massively in its monetary policies, trying to keep USD the global reserve currency, while we're seeing a lot of third world countries and Asian countries adopting cryptocurrencies and crypto assets. And if US falls behind on that scene, well, they're going to be in a lot of trouble if USD ever becomes not the global reserve currency and they're not on the right side of history as far as crypto and crypto taxation. The United States has massive debt, right, guys? What's one way that they could try to fill the hole with some taxation? Well, you're allowing Bitcoin mining, because they're taxing all those individuals. They're getting power usage. You're allowed the Bitcoin spot ETF. Why? Because you can tax those capital gains. You probably should allow Ethereum ETF to, again, allow those capital gains. And, Coinbase is kind of winning their lawsuits over there. So they are going to, support Coinbase, everything that's going on with Coinbase. Why? Because they want all the users. They want all those traders. They want all those taxes on the gains that you guys are making. We're in a big hole in America. So I think they need to buckle up. They need to support cryptocurrencies because they're not going anywhere. They're a global monetary policy. They're being traded globally. So they might as well support it and get their piece of the pie. I've been on the record for months now, even before the Bitcoin spot ETF was approved, saying that I think the Ethereum spot ETF would be approved in May of 2024 or August of 2024. Those are the next approval dates. Will that happen? I don't know. I think the Hong Kong ETF helps my case a little bit. Maybe I'll be wrong and I'll just say, well, I meant the Hong Kong one, even though that's not what I meant. Overall, I do agree with you that this court case is going to take forever. I don't think we're going to see a major negative headwind for Ethereum. Obviously, if in May it gets pushed back, that's the same thing that happened leading into the Bitcoin spot ETF. Maybe there'll be a red bar for a day because people are like, oh no Ethereum spot ETF. Well, the next approval is in August. So we'll see what happens. But overall, I'm not overly scared here in the markets. Yes, it's a big drawdown. Yes, this is not anything out of the ordinary. And I kind of gave you my downside objectives. 53,000 worst case scenario for Bitcoin, 2,500 worst case for Ethereum if you think we're still in a bull market, if you think we're heading higher here leading into 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I do think we're long term zoom out. We're in good shape, folks. Nothing to panic about, nothing to get overly concerned about. This is the nature of crypto. You got to get used to these 20% drawdowns. They happen regularly, even in a bull run. You just kind of have to roll with it. And that's why we always say, hey, have some, have a hobby, go outside, do something else. You don't want to focus on the charts all day, every day. It's just not healthy. So we're going to be fine. We're going to make it. We'd love to hear from you guys. What's your take on the crash? What's your take on this little resurgence today, May 2nd? Or are we going to see things continue to rally, or you guys see more downside? What's your take long term? When do you think we're going to go parabolic? We want to hear from you guys on the channel. We really appreciate all your support. We've been growing like crazy, so we love to see all that engagement. Any final thoughts before we jump off?
No real final thoughts besides hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and maybe you'll get your chance to get on the beach with us.
All right, guys, appreciate it, and we will see you soon, and we'll see you on the beach.